Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everybody in to Garden of Doom, and today we have a very special guest. I've been advertising that we are going to have Chris O'Brien, who is one of the foremost experts in the San Luis Valley and all of the mysteries surrounding the San Luis Valley. He's an author of several publications: The Mysterious Valley, Enter the Valley, Secrets of the Mysterious Valley, Stalking the Tricksters, Stalking the Herd, and My Dog Sings Chopin. So he also has a website, www.ourstrangeplanet.com. And he had his own podcast radio show where he was a co-host for, looks like about 9 years, called The Paracast. So he's no stranger to radio podcasts. He's been on lots of television shows. And why would I try to introduce someone when someone is here? So Chris, thank you very much for coming to the garden. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Just trying to get back in the swing with not having the internet for 2 days. Well, actually 3 days. I thought, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to have to, read twice as many books.
Uh-oh.
But here I am online. I did manage to get myself online. I live in a really remote area of upstate New York on the highest hill in the county. I'm 4 miles from away from the end of the actual internet trunk lines that are coming up into the hinterlands here, and I expect hopefully to be fiber optic within 6 months if I'm lucky.
Well, we're rooting for that infrastructure to get up to your area. It's hard to live without the internet these days. It's a lot less, especially if you like streaming. But anyway, I was referred to you by, I guess, a mutual friend, someone who's been a guest on this show before and is scheduled to be on again, Maya Christine. And her show was, I think I called it Crystal Blue Persuasion, but it's somewhere in the 40s. And she said that she's acquainted with one of the foremost experts on the mysteries of the San Luis Valley. I'm like, what San Luis Valley? What mysteries? And she's like, you don't know anything about it? I'm like, I don't think so. And she's like, take a look. And I took a look and I'm like, whoa, there's like nothing that's not here. It's like this radius area in the Four Corners, and I mean, there's UFO sightings. There's like cryptids with, may or may not be Bigfoots. I mean, ghosts. Everything you can name is there, and apparently you have covered it all. And a lot of people have come to you to talk about it. So, the rest of the show is basically yours. I'm sure I'll interject with questions or very scintillating comments from time to time, or my own little brand of comedy. But the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then the Four Corners, how you became acquainted with it, and then you can sort of launch into what are the biggest stories to come out of there, mysteries, the ones you're most familiar with, and if you have some sort of theory or through line or whatever, that would be great as well.
Well, it would take about a week in a college level course to really cover all the material. Obviously, as you noted, that the San Luis Valley features a variety and intensity of unexplained phenomena that I don't see rivaled anywhere in North America, at least. There's probably areas around the world that can make a similar claim. But one thing about the valley that's very interesting to note is it's on the backbone of America. It's the largest alpine valley in the world, and the valley floor sits at 7,500 feet. It's 10,000 square miles that are above a mile and a half in the air. And the mountains that totally surround the valley, which is about 140 miles long, 60 to 70 miles wide. Those mountains, there's 7 of them that go up to 14,000 feet. So it's a very remote area. It's not well known. They didn't have paved highways until the 60s. TV didn't arrive. Broadcast television didn't arrive until the 80s. And it has developed, because it's so isolated, it's developed its own very unique subcultural belief systems, which are a big part of my investigative sort of focus, for lack of a better word. Essentially, anything that you have heard about the paranormal or UFOs, strange creatures, weird occult type figures, or skinwalkers or witches. All this stuff happens here, and it has been happening all the way back into prehistory. This is also a very unique spot in North America, in that this is the only region that 3 regional groups of Indians overlapped. In other words, the Great Plains Indians, the Great Basin Indians and nomads, and the southwestern tribes all peacefully used the valley during the warmer months under penalty of death for raising, weapons against fellow men. And it was used primarily as a vision quest area and hunting area. But it also is, it contains sacred sites that are really important to various members of the 13 tribes that used to peacefully utilize the valley. This is the only spot in North America that can say that. So when I got here in 1989, I didn't know any of this, obviously. I was just trying to find a job in construction or whatever. Actually, my first job was feeding cows. So it was only after I started seeing weird things in the sky and having, weird synchronistic experiences and just stuff that makes you kind of, take note, sit up and take notice, be a little bit more aware. And after about 2 years, I realized that I had moved to a place that had a lot of mystery and a lot of intrigue that was going on, and that it wasn't ancient history like the locals were telling me. What do you want to know about that stuff for? That was 40 years ago. Well, all that stuff burbles along. It's always percolating. It's always burbling, and whether it's UFO sightings or cattle mutilations or Bigfoot sightings or weird weather, strange, aberrant social behavior.
Can I ask you something? I mean, you said you were in upstate New York, but I know where the Four Corners is. But this was, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is southwestern Colorado, northeastern,
South Central.
South Central, and it goes into what, the New Mexico, Arizona, or
North Central New Mexico is the bottom quarter of the valley. The majority of the valley is in Colorado, but geologically it goes down to Taos.
Okay.
And it follows the path of the Rio Grande River, which comes in at the halfway point in the valley in the west, coming down from Cree. The Rio Grande comes in to the middle of the valley, and then it turns and goes south all the way to El Paso. But the upper portion of it has the Rio Grande Gorge, which is just north of Taos, New Mexico. Taos, New Mexico would be, in terms of the geologic valley or the geographic valley, would be at the southern tip of it. And then the northern tip would be Poncha Pass, which goes up and over the pass down into the Arkansas River Valley, which goes up past the highest mountains in Colorado.
Okay, for those who don't know where Taos is about, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 90 or 100 miles north of Santa Fe, which is about 70 or 80 miles north of Albuquerque.
Correct.
I'm near right anyway.
Get your maps out.
Right, everyone get your maps out. Now, you said that there were 13 tribes there, and I took note because 13 is a number that repeats itself all the time in lore and legends, and that just seems to be a remarkable coincidence to me, if it's a coincidence at all. I know that there was the 12 tribes of Israel, but there's always legend to be the one lost tribe, which would make 13. I know in the Mesoamerican cultures, 13 was sort of like a holy number, which often repeated, found in the 52s. So is there anything to that, or is it's just one of those things?
I really don't know. I don't want to factor anything out or factor anything in. I tend to look at 13s and 11s, especially combinations of those two, very closely. They are a synchronistic indicator for me.
Okay, that's fair. So there's it's not nothing, but we don't know what it is. We don't want to overinflate it. We don't underinflate. Listen, I am sort of rather new to being in this depth of this world. So anytime I see commonalities, I might stretch a lot, but I get a little excited. Ask us I don't want you, unless you can easily do so, to recite the names of the 13 tribes. But was one of the tribes the Hopi?
Yeah. It's a very, very. It's at the extended reach of their world to the northeast corner of Hopi land.
The only reason the only reason I ask that is because I've come across so much that even among the First Nations, the Native Americans, the Hopis were considered the old people, the ones who had, the most connection to, I'll just call it the old worlds for lack of, better terms, wherever those were, whether it came from the South Pacific or from Central Asia or what.
Exactly. Yeah, I consider them to be the primordial Aboriginal culture in North America. The Hopi claim they've been here at least 60,000 years.
Yeah, I believe it. I don't see why not. All right, I'm going to let you continue then, along with your journey. You were basically at the point where you're saying that there was no ancient history, that everything, there was no break. The history was ongoing and as we say in my business, continuous and uninterrupted.
Right. Well, to give you some of the tribes, the Plains Indians would include the Lakota, the Dakota, the Mandan, the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, the Kiowa, the Blackfoot, the Comanche, and then the Southwestern Indians would be the Dene, which are Hickory Apache, the Navajo, various clans of the Navajo. Navajo are probably the ones that hold the place as most sacred. And then you had your other Pueblo Indians besides the Hopi and the Zuni, which are the Zuni are the Hopi's kind of little brothers. All the northern Pueblos going up the Rio Grande, there's 22 of them. And so get up to the top of the Tiwa and the Tewa at the Taos Pueblo, and all the pictures, you could go down and start naming all the Pueblo tribes, which I won't bore your audience. But all these, they all came there. I mean, this was a place that may have had some of the last herds of mastodon there. There's archaeological sites that have been worked on by the Smithsonian Institute. David, what's his name? Dennis Stanford and Peggy Gaudry did a dig there that's been going on for 40 years. And some of the earliest known vestiges of humans in North America are found right to the west of the Great Sand Dunes, which are this weird desert that shouldn't be there. It's at a height of 7,500 feet is the base of it, and it goes up to above 9,000 feet. And they really don't know why it's there. They tell you a story of prevailing westerly winds piling up the sand in a crook in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, which are the huge wall of mountains that go up the entire east side of the valley. But when they did a core sampling down in the middle of the dunes at the highest point, digging down, they actually found ancient forests that have been covered up by this sand. And so they did carbon-14 dating, and they were totally blown away when the readings came back that the sand dunes had only been there 11,000 years. Now, you're talking about 49 square miles of sand going up to 700 feet. And all that was supposedly deposited in 11,000 years. Well, I know a little bit about geology. I was a geology minor in school, and that's a real stretch. So the valley has this wonderful traditional sense of having sacred sites, of being a special location, and correspondingly, we have waves of unusual, unexplained events that have occurred all the way back to the 20s. My earliest sighting was actually from the 1770s when the Spanish governor of New Mexico was chasing a Comanche chief. Before that, they wouldn't come up into the valley officially. They didn't want to deal with it. So for 200 years, the Spanish were down in Taos at the southern end of the valley, but they never ventured forth officially up into the San Luis Valley. But in 1777, Juan Bautista de Anza, the governor of New Spain, or the section of the Southwest we now call New Mexico, he chased Cuerno Verde or Greenhorn, the Comanche chief, up into the valley because Greenhorn had been attacking Spanish settlements around Taos. And so they chased him up there, and he reported in his journal that they were camped at the base of Blanca Peak and the whole Blanca Massif, which is, I think, 14,000 foot mountains. And they saw weird lights flitting around the peaks at night, and they heard a low kind of droning, I don't know, I guess a Taos hum. They were able to hear something akin to the Taos hum. And that's the earliest that we have at least potential documentation of unexplained events.
What kind of
And since then-
documentation? Was it like a governor's diary, or did he write it to the king or of Spain, or where's the documentation, or what kind of documentation?
Well, he had a diary that I'm not sure where it is now. I had a graduate student tell me that there is no mention of it, but I do have somebody wrote a paper at the University of Washington, I think Marilyn Childs, and she mentioned that De Anza did notate and document having strange sightings and hearing with his men, hearing the weird low, deep vibration.
Was it sort of like the medicine bowl kind of hum that you know from Tibet? And I never pronounced the name of the instrument correctly from Australia that the Aborigines use, didgeridoo or something.
No, didgeridoo.
Didgeridoo, right? Was it? Is that what you're envisioning, or is it more of a?
It was like a super, extremely low frequency that you almost didn't hear. You felt it in your guts.
Oh, so more like almost something mechanical going through the, almost rumbling, like if an air conditioner or machine is sort of on the ground, that you sort of feel it in your gut.
It's like a full cement truck parked idling about 2 miles away.
Gotcha. I have a question for you that's completely unrelated to this, or directly anyway, but because it's up so high, I think you said the base was 7,000 feet, which of course means that the peaks are much higher. Anybody knows the Rocky Mountain area and the Sangre de Cristos, etc. Are there petroglyphs in this part of the world?
Yeah, all over.
Okay, good. Yeah,
and there are rock cairns that mark high points for navigation and location, triangulation. And I have not seen it. I've seen photographs and I've seen diagrams, and I've talked to archaeologists that have seen it, but there's a 1,200 foot long it's like three snakes in a swastika that have been terraformed into the land. And at the mouth of the main middle snake is a large boulder that looks like it's either puking it out or getting ready to eat it. Now, this is the largest terraformed figure outside of the mound culture around Cahokia and the Ohio River and Snake Mound and all those earthworks in the Midwest. And for that reason, a particular archaeologist for the Smithsonian refuses to publicly acknowledge that it's there, even though they went there and checked it out and did say that this is a legitimate, somebody, humans did this.
Do they know the age of it?
I've never heard an age, but it goes all the way back to the 1700s at least.
Okay, because that's important, because I feel like whenever the swastika is brought up, and I also feel like most of my audience has been with the show for a while, so they already know this, but it's a podcast and you get new audiences all the time and new listeners and whatnot. So I always think it's important whenever the swastika is brought up that, just like in one of the opening scenes of the Da Vinci Code, that the swastika actually goes back to the ancient Eastern cultures. I mean, back India, before India was India, Persia. It was a symbol of fertility and life that was appropriated by the Nazis in, I guess, the 30s or, whenever they appropriated it. And it will probably never get its old reputation back, if that's the right word for it. But the swastika carved into there is almost certainly not tied to Nazism, and almost certainly tied to those Near Eastern and Far Eastern philosophies, religion, symbology of a more, of a more positive life-affirming nature.
Well, Hitler turned it around. The Nazi swastika is backwards.
Oh, I never heard that before.
Yeah. It's a counterclockwise swirl as opposed to the sacred version of it is clockwise.
Okay. Is there an ancient symbol name that's different than swastika that we could use going forward, or are we stuck with it?
I'm sure there is, especially in the Tibetan tradition. But I'm a little rusty on my Tibetan.
That's all right. I'm talking to somebody who's expert in Tibetan, so I will make sure to ask that person that question. Should they be kind enough for it to develop where they come on the show, and should I remember whenever that time comes? But I don't want to fixate on that. But I think that's the petroglyphs. I mean, they're so high, they're so detailed. It's almost impossible to imagine doing them in anything other than the technology over the last 50, maybe 70 years tops. And a lot of people think that the only reason for it was landmarks, basically runways. That you could only really see them from above, and that they were basically road maps, but sky maps.
I think you're talking about geoglyphs.
Yes, I am talking about geoglyphs. So am I misspeaking when I asked you about petroglyphs? Are they not high up there?
Petroglyphs are scraped into the rock, and they're usually on vertical surfaces, so you can't see them from above. Pictographs are painted on.
Pictographs, okay. That I think you're okay.
Painted on. And geoglyphs are like the Nazca lines,
yes,
and the big guy out there in the desert in extreme eastern Colorado or California, Nevada area.
Oh, so are there any geoglyphs in this part of the world that we're talking about?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so I've gone on this tangent because I confused two words. See, I am, like I said, I'm new to this this depth of the world. So thank you for that correction. I'm not editing that out because I'm not ashamed to make mistakes. It's fine, and that's why we have experts on the show. Okay, sorry, carry on, sir.
So anyway, when I arrived there, I knew about the Snippy case, which when I was 10 years old in Bellevue, Washington, I remember one day in the fall, I think it was around the end of October, my mom took me and my brother, and we went to the Safeway, and we were shopping and getting Halloween candy, I'm sure. And I remember we were standing there getting ready to stand in the line to check out, and I saw the National Enquirer, and it had the headline, "Flying Saucers Killed My Horse." And there was a picture of these three people looking down at a horse that had all the flesh and bone, or flesh, muscle, hide, tissue, connective tissue taken from the tip of its nose to, like if it had a collar around its chest and neck, like it had been cut right there, and then everything from there to the nose had been vacuum cleanered away. And I don't know, it's 25 cents or 30 cents or whatever to buy the magazine. I pleaded with my mom, "Please buy this." So she did. And of course, I read it before probably read it twice before we got home. And that's where I first heard about San Luis Valley, where I ended up moving in 1989 to Crestone. I was about 60 miles north of where the Snippy case happened, and if I went out on my roof, I could look down and actually see the spot. And so I remember thinking, wow, I got to go there someday, And that was in 1967. And so lo and behold, I ended up moving there in 1989 in July. And I remember the Snippy case. I remember the San Luis Valley, but I didn't really know hardly anything else about the place. when I moved there. I didn't know that all around the time of the Snippy case in 67, 68, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of UFO sightings. It was such a big deal locally there. The people by the hundreds would line the roads waiting for the UFOs to show up. It was a really big deal. I had no idea about any of this. So for the first couple years I was there, I kind of asked around a little bit about weird stuff, and I quickly found out that, I could, I wouldn't be endearing myself and making friends with that line of questioning. So I kind of, kept it quiet a little bit. And it wasn't until after a number of really impressive sightings that myself and others had, and then these two huge 100-foot owls that came down out of the mountains and flew over the town and hovered out in the valley at the end of the Spanish Creek. It had trees going all the way out. And there were 18 people that evidently saw this, as I found out at a New Year's Eve party I had in 92. And I thought, wow, what a great story for the local paper. I'll be able to poke jokes at the hippies having a flashback, or, I was going to come up with some, which I absolutely hate and detest now, but I was going to come up with some, tongue-in-cheek kind of story. And so the publisher of the paper, the Crescent Eagle, said, yeah, sure, give me a 500-page article. Well, I had 2 weeks before I had to turn it in, and at the end of 2 weeks, I had uncovered enough material for a book. And my article was 1,500 pages. It was not joking about the phenomenon. It was deadly serious. A mutilation had happened the same night, 2 counties south, when the 200-foot ovals happened, which is December 9th, 1992.
Mutilation of...
What?
Mutilation of cattle?
Cow.
Okay. Yeah, I mean...
95% of the other mutilations.
I knew that was probably where it was going, but I mean, mutilation, it could have been of people, Where...
Yeah. Anyway, my bad.
It's okay.
I wrote the article. It came out, and it got picked up by the Associated Press, United Press International, Reuters. It went all over the world. I was inundated with requests for information. Had to get a larger post office box. I was on national television within 2 months.
Okay. Good.
Go figure.
Yeah. Well, you've been on television a lot since then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, actually, let's continue with your narrative, and then we'll try to hit. Well, I think that you'll probably get to things, in the order, but I'm curious if there's any stark or obvious divisions between the so I'll just call them the UFO sightings versus sort of the ghostly apparition sightings versus the I know the UFO sightings often coincide with mutilations. Some people tell me always, along with cryptids or other sightings. So, obviously, as you said, you could write books and books, and you'd need a week to do so. But hopefully we can hit those big four. In the Marvel universe, they said the big three are androids, aliens, and wizards. The big four here would be aliens, monsters, ghosts, and other.
Yeah. Well, as far as trends and patterning, I'm always and have always been looking at things from outside of the box and really attempting to establish some sort of connection between divergent, one would think unrelated paranormal phenomena from each other. But I have found that there are some commonalities. When we have UFO sightings, that means everything else that could possibly be weird, there's a chance that it's going on as well. And one thing that I noticed in the valley itself is these things called cheap fireworks, that I call cheap fireworks. They're like giant bottle rockets that fizzle out. You can see smoke behind them. I've seen them go out and light up a line of trees on the creek going out into the valley. And there was a complete overcast sky. So these aren't meteorites. These are smaller. I think they're effects of some sort of energetic process that's going on. But they tend to happen at the beginning of a wave of UFO sightings. And then when the wave's about ready to end, you'll see them again. So they herald the wave in and they usher it out. And that's something that's the only real consistent thing that I've seen that I've been able to sort of act upon. In other words, when I see cheap fireworks, I'll alert my network and say, hey, within a day or two, we're going to have a bunch of stuff going on. And invariably, yeah, that's what happens. So
do you think it's like a reconnaissance or scouts, and then on the reverse, it's sort of like a rear guard watching the six kind of thing?
No, I think it's some sort of energetic. It's an effect from the energy that allows for things to come into manifestation in our three-dimensional reality. In other words, it's almost like a signal of some sort of door that's going to be opening. And then we have the activity. And then when the door is going to shut, the cheap fireworks flare. And within a day, it's gone. And I saw that time and time and time again. So most people, when they see it, they think, oh, it's just a shooting star. But usually it's in your peripheral vision, so you don't pay much attention to it. I've seen them right in front of me, within 50 feet, maybe 70 feet. These are not meteors, and they're not something that I could go to a textbook and say, okay, this is what it is. They've already defined this. This is an as yet undefined natural phenomenon. And I think it has some sort of indication of a time period where events are then begin to unfold.
But I'm sure living where you've lived and experienced what you've experienced, that you are able to eliminate ball lightning as a suspect.
I've seen ball lightning. It has nothing to do with any sort of lightning.
Good. I could just tell you that some of my smarter listeners would be going, oh, it sounds like ball lightning to me. So I just want to make sure that they knew you knew the difference.
It's really rare.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, but ball lightning gets blamed for everything from genies to will-o'-the-wisps to UFO sightings. I just want to clarify that you had seen it, you knew what it was, and you know it when you see it, and more to the point, you know it's not it when you see something that's not ball lightning.
Yeah, yes, exactly. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen cheap fireworks during any period where there's been electrical activity with thunderstorms in the area or that sort of thing.
Yeah, it would be weird. It's not really the time for it anyway. All right. All right. So yeah, talk to us about then after the heralds come and then the sightings. What who's reporting these sightings? Is it all sorts of people, all sorts of walks of life? Are there any commonalities, shapes, sizes?
Well, the first thing that I had to do when I decided to, spend really good quality time chasing down these events and attempting to get to the bottom of them, the first thing I had to do was establish trust within the local community. And anyone who thinks that they can go as a stranger into some place that, they want to investigate and spend a week or 2 weeks and discover all the secrets of that place are crazy. There's just no way. You have to live there. You have to have a local phone number. You have to demonstrate to people that you will honor all claims, please, of anonymity. People saying request anonymity. You have to honor all those. People say, I want credit for this. I want you to, say that it was me that had this particular event happen. That's my photograph. You always have to credit your sources. And if you can do that for a couple years and people know that they can trust you, then you're in a position to start to really get, make some headway and get deeper into the communities that are experiencing these things. And what makes the San Luis Valley doubly interesting is that the southern half of the valley is ancient Spaniard multi-generation conquistadores. I've met Hispanics in the backwoods with red hair and blue eyes. And that harkens all the way back to the 1600s from the initial push of Spaniards up the Rio Grande up to the Taos area, which is about as far north as they got. And so pretty much from the center of the valley down to the southern third, it's all old world Hispanic or Hispano communities that have their own language. They have a version of Spanish that, someone from Spain or someone from Mexico City probably couldn't understand them. It's so unique to that area. Don't forget, this place culturally has been isolated for 400 or 500 years. And it makes investigating all that much more difficult. But the northern part of the valley, from the center to the north, is all 19th century, late 18th century, 19th century, and 20th century Anglo, a lot of Mormons, some Mennonites, and a lot of people from the Midwest looking for good ranch land who arrived in the 60s and 70s. There was quite a number of Japanese here who arrived in the 20s and 30s. The famous boxer Jack Dempsey was the only white boy in a school full of Hispanics, and so that's how he got really tough and was able to knock people out. He lived right in the center of the valley in Manassas, so basically my point is that you really have to be able to exercise a good bedside manner. To give you an idea, I got a call from a guy who says, look, my cousin, who, is a neighbor of mine, he had, a big mothership land in the back 40 and really freaked him and his family out. And I really think that he needs to talk to you, but he said, don't tell him about it. I don't want anybody to know. And so he says, well, I'm just telling you, but don't say I told you. And so I gave the guy a call. I said, hey, this is Chris O'Brien. You probably, know about my work and stuff. And I was just wondering, hey, I saw that you knocked all your hay down. When you going to be able to get it up before it rains? You ever going to bail it up? Yeah, your son, his basketball team's doing real good this year. Are they going to the playoffs, you think? And I just wanted to call and introduce myself. Hey, talk to you later.
Plant seeds.
And after a couple calls like that, the third call, okay, I'll tell you. I know why you're calling. I'll tell you. Sometimes you make the greatest progress by never stating your intention, and that's a pretty good clue for all you aspiring paranormal sleuths out there. Sometimes the best way to get information is to, just create that tension.
Can I ask you a question about something that you mentioned earlier about the Spaniards that you encountered with red hair and blue eyes? And what's the particular significance of that? I mean, I don't know much about Spain, but I don't think red hair, blue eyes when I think Spain, though I'm sort of familiar with legends of red-haired, blue-eyed peoples, that tend to be big, sometimes called giants, sometimes, from Easter Island to South and Central America to Australia and other places. Is that the connection there, or are there a lot of Spaniards that are
the bloodlines? The bloodlines are very pure there, and I think marriages are very. It's controlled by the families, by the bloodlines, and when you see curly-haired, blonde or red or green or blue-eyed Hispanics, you kind of get an understanding that there's a genetic line that's going through the culture there that goes way back to Europe, and that's it's just reality there. And a lot of those communities at one time or another, maybe not so much now, but were penitentes, the most fundamentalist of all Christians. Very, very similar to some of the Arabic traditions where they would march, on Good Friday and flagellate themselves and, march naked over cactus fields and, and crucify the most penitent brother on Good Friday. And it's a whole part of America that very, very few people know about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I certainly don't. But it's not going back to anything, alien. It's just going back to, it's just families, tight knit communities dating back to, likely some sort of European immigration.
Well, not likely. When the Spanish got up to Taos in the late 1500s, early 1600s, they started, settling in the area around. And then they had the big Taos revolt in 1680. And that chased a lot of the settlers into the hills. And that's where these little towns like Pataca and Las Chuchas and Las Tablas and Chimayo and these places grew up and survived the insurrection by the Pueblo Indians. And then these communities have slowly, just continued, just little families here and there, worshiping in their maradas and doing their really penitent, hardcore Christian flagellism and stuff, and then having kids. It's a reflected gene pool.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's easier to understand. I mean, from my perspective, of course, unfortunate, but we want to stick to the facts, so it's perfectly fine. I just wanted to clarify. Chris, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. I thought that we had lost you. Okay, so I sort of forgot where you had left off when I got on my own little sidetrack there, my own tangent.
Well, I was talking about what you have to really take into account when you're going into an area and attempting to become the local investigator.
Right.
You have to be local. You can't go into a place and expect everybody to open up and tell you all the secrets of their universe. It doesn't happen that way. I worked on people 3 and 4 years before I was able to get them to fess up about something I knew they had experienced, but they were unwilling to talk about. And I don't want to dissuade people from attempting this. I think with the internet and, I did all my work pre-internet. I did it the old-fashioned way. I went into newspaper archives, magazine archives. I wrote letters. spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on local long distance phone calls. It cost me more to call just 60 miles away than it did for me to call New York, which was very, very aggravating. At 15 cents a minute, it adds up real quick.
Yeah, people can't really even connect with that anymore with cell phones and stuff. But it wasn't that long ago that that was a really big deal when you called and where you called. But
well, like I said, they didn't get TV in the Valley till the 80s. They didn't get cell phones until 2005, I think, 2004.
Wow. Okay. Well, okay. So we understand that your, the method you used was the, sort of an old fashioned one, that you became a member of the community and a trusted member. People got to know you. You were there a long time. You were committed to it. You were committed to the area, and you became part of the community before people opened up to you. But now we want to get to the meat. What did they open up to? What did they tell you?
Just the most bizarre accounts that, I felt that needed to be shared, and that's why I wrote 3 books about it. It's such a kaleidoscope, a bewildering panoply of events and descriptions and bizarro type claims. And these are all salt of the earth people. They're farmers, they're ranchers, they're people that have they don't have anything to gain from coming forward and speaking, but because they are aware of my work and how I was saying it was really important to get this stuff documented. You don't have to use your name, you don't have to get embarrassed publicly, but if you come forward and share your experiences, at least we'll be able to get them documented. And as a result of all that documentation, I have probably the largest single database of unusual phenomena and weird weather and weird societal behavior and unexplained military activity. That's all included in a single database. I'm very proud of it. And it's available for anybody that wants to look at it.
Well, if you were going to summarize, like if you were going to go to a book show, but you only had, 10 minutes to sell each book, with, teasers as to what you found. And, if you want the details, read the book. Let's pretend we're doing that. So you can give the book title, where it can be found, and then sort of say like the top 2 or 3 things in there and give us a little synopsis of them and then move on to the next book, because you've got 3, right? So we might as well try to help move them.
Well, I have 3 about the Valley. One that tries to explain the interconnectedness between all the bewildering array of divergent phenomena. Stalking the Tricksters tries to come up with a mechanism that connects everything. And Stalking the Herd is the Bible of the cattle mutilation phenomenon. It's the only book that really, goes into case histories for all the waves. It was 900 pages when I finished it. I had to take 300 pages out. It's probably what I'll be remembered for. It's the only single book that encompasses and encapsulates an entire category of paranormal phenomena. There is no other book.
Wow. How many cattle mutilations were documented, ballpark?
Somewhere around 10,000.
Wow. And is this all over the world, or is this just the United States?
No, that's just in the United States. And then since then, there's been about another 3,500, 3,700 down in South America since 2002.
And do these normally, it's hard to call something so abnormal normal, but do these usually come with accompanied with some type of sighting?
I think down in South America, the odds of having some sort of weird lights or craft scene is much higher than the percentage looking at the North American cases. North American cases have about as many helicopter sightings as South America has light light activity sightings. America has at least by now 400 documented helicopter sightings. Or now we're going to be getting into the whole category of drones, which I think we're going to be seeing cattle mutilation cases with drones seen around. That's my little prediction.
Oh, that's well, noted. But what did you find for the 10,000, or what commonalities, or what were you looking for? What did you find?
Well, the first thing I look for is cut hair follicles. Coyotes, birds, maggots, foxes, bears, none of these animals that might attack and devour a carcass, none of them can cut hair. And if they do, it's only 1 or 2 follicles. To cut hair in a straight line, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches, somebody did that with a sharp implement. All these new Johnny-come-lately investigators, I keep trying to beat them over the head with that. Look for cut hair follicles. If you can't find that, it is not high strange. I don't care what it looks like.
Why do you think cows are the frequent victims of this? Is it just collateral damage that when a UFO lands that they get sort of, they're in the open space and they get sort of eviscerated, or is there?
I mean, if a UFO lands, I think there's 3 cases, to my knowledge, where UFOs have been seen landed at a cattle mutilation site. 3 out of 10,000. So what's
the thing about cow? Why are cows picked out?
If you're AB positive blood type, you could survive. You could survive a transfusion of cattle hemoglobin.
Oh, so you suggesting for long trips they need the blood? Or is that one conclusion? I mean,
oh, you're funny.
I've been told that. I'm trying to figure it out. Well, tell me what's the
Look, cattle hemoglobin is a virtual genetic match to human hemoglobin. That's the only thing that I can figure. They'd much rather have humans, but let's take the cows as a sloppy second.
Well, who are the they? Who wants the cow's blood?
It's either the government doing tests for mad cow disease, prospecting for oil, looking at above ground pollution levels, downwind and downstream irradiation, looking for outbreaks of mad cow disease, stomatitis, what else? Clostridia. It's a little bit on the complicated side.
Yeah, well, that's not sexy, but all right, fine. It's the government. All right. Well,
I mean, that's the majority of my 200 cases that I went out on. 40 of them were done by humans. Out of those 40, there were 7 or 8 that I don't know. Humans may have had a difficult time doing that. There was some sort of exalted technology involved, but that's a very small percentage out of 200. 7, 8 cases out of 200.
Okay.
It's what, 6%, something.
Are there any military governmental facilities in this 10,000 square mile valley?
Not in the valley. The entire eastern side is the western boundary of the Levita Military Operations Area, which is our largest low-level flight training area for the Air Force, Air National Guard, and even sometimes we rent the airspace out to the Germans and the Israelis and others to train their pilots in nape of the earth, low-level flight training.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay, so moving on from the cows, the poor cows, what else have you come across? In whatever order you like, whatever you think are the most interesting or easiest to describe.
I really wouldn't know where to start. Oh my God! It's just it's an embarrassment of riches.
Well, let's start with cryptids.
I had 7 UFO or 7 Bigfoot reports in 7 days.
All right, well, let's talk about those. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, it was December, I think, 94. And we had a flurry of sightings right around the border with New Mexico on the north side of San Antone Peak, which is the largest freestanding mountain in North America. And it tends to be a place where Bigfoot have been, historically reported. And then just north of there, across the Conejas River, which is the boundary between New Mexico and Colorado, and you go up Conejas Canyon, there's been at least a dozen Bigfoot sightings up there. But right along the river during that period at the end of December, beginning of January, 95, we had a number of sighting reports there, including one that had 2 sets of footprints that went hundreds and hundreds of yards on ice, on snow, in the mud, in slushy snow, went down over the river or across the river and then up the other side into Colorado. And the case was investigated by the police chief of, I think it was one of the police officers of Antonito, Colorado, and then a deputy sheriff of the Conejas County. And they videotaped the tracks. And I actually produced and directed a segment for Strange Universe that featured the tracks, and they had drops of blood in the larger set of tracks, and one the left footprint seemed to be heavier than the right footprint. So what they determined was that it had a haunch of an elk on its shoulder, because when they had the blood tested that was dripping, it came back as elk blood. So 2 days before, they'd been seen stalking a herd of elk on the north slope of San Antone Peak. Hunter, under a spotting scope, saw them checking out this herd of elk, and then the thinking is that they got one.
Them,
and,
so they're pack, they're social.
Well, it was two individuals. They think a male and a female.
Oh, okay.
And they brought it out of New Mexico, from the mountain across the river, and then probably up Conejas Canyon. During the summer, sightings happened at the top of Conejas Canyon up high, and then during the winter they happened down by the river and over towards the mountain. And before this particular case, I always assumed that Bigfoot was a herbivore. I didn't know that they were meat eaters, and this was the first time that I was shown some evidence that would suggest that they're omnivores, that they're both carnivorous and herbivores.
What's the physical description?
It's your usual description. They aren't seen that often. These particular cases, the hunter did see them under his scope. Long hair, hands below the knees, long arms, tend to run in kind of a herky-jerky manner. They're not smooth.
Around how tall?
Kind of hard to say. 7 foot, probably, at least.
Yes.
The animals that are reported in the San Luis Valley tend to be shorter. When you go over to Dulce and around the Jicarilla Apache Reservation, they get real tall over there. I think the tallest report I've heard is 12 feet.
Is there any difference in the descriptions from winter to summer? In other words, do they shed like other animals?
I don't know. That's a good question. I do not know. I've never heard anything about shedding Bigfoots. One thing that I can say is that we did have reports in the 1880s, mining camp up around Crestone. They had they thought was maybe a young Bigfoot, maybe teenager type, that was lurking around their camp, and they would throw it food, and they named it. They called it Boji, and they were actually feeding it. And this was in the late 1880s. And since then, we've never had a Bigfoot report. You know, up the Sangres from the border, probably 100 miles. There had been no reports. And then all of a sudden, just 3 or 4 years ago, 3 Bigfoots, a family, were seen coming through. And then later in the fall, they were headed back south. So it seems like they've started coming down the Sangres on the east side of the valley, and they're now back in the Crestone area around North Crestone Creek and Burnt Gulch and some areas up there.
Okay. How about the coloration? Is it consistent? Is it, brown fur, black fur, red fur? Is it different?
Brown to brownish red, and then a couple of cases they said dark brown.
Okay. All right. I mean, the reason I asked about the shedding, not just for just to see if there were, is because like humans I don't think primates do. I'm not really sure about that. But like deer and and bears and even dogs and cats do. So I was just trying to see if there was anything there.
Yeah, it's a good question. I've never really heard anybody address that.
All right, well, maybe somebody will now. All right, so we had any other cryptids besides Bigfoot? Or I mean, not that Bigfoot isn't enough, but
we have dimensional entities, creatures that I personally have seen, including the prairie dragons. I call them. They're 2-3 feet long. They look like a sea slug. They're tapered at both ends. They're translucent on the ends, and then the middle of their body is opaque, can't see through it. They don't seem to have any legs or a head. They undulate like dolphins or like swimmers in the Olympics when they're underwater and they're getting ready to go into the breaststroke. They do the dolphin swim where they're undulating. They move like that, about 6-8 inches off the ground. They don't leave any tracks. Dogs will chase them. Dogs know they're there. You normally only see them in your peripheral vision. I fortunately was able to look directly at one when it appeared and then disappeared, and was right there within less than 2 seconds. It's only about 12, 15 feet away from me.
Is there a smell?
And I was able... What?
Is there a smell?
No. I heard a kind of a tweeting sound in my ears when I saw it.
Interesting. Tweeting or chirping or tweeting?
Combination of the both.
Okay, interesting. Like dolphin or bird? Neither. Okay. More insect or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost insect-like.
And no visible wings or gliding or sails or anything like that?
It undulated right in front of me, 12 feet away.
Okay.
And it's surrounding, this type of activity happens around a particular spot that I've been able, over many years of observation and plotting movements on maps and stuff, I've been able to come up with an exact location where these things appear to be coming from and going to.
What was the name you gave them?
Prairie dragons.
Prairie dragons. Are there any other names for them? Do any of the First Nations peoples have names for them?
That's what my Navajo buddy Wolf and Allie told me. That's what the Navajo call them.
Okay, cool. All right. Any others? Not that interdimensional. Because actually, before we leave that, you probably have no idea is this, but maybe you do. I mean, how do they get here? From what dimension? How do you know it's dimension versus time travel? I have so many questions.
Well, you can see through them.
And you can see into...
No, you see through them. They appear and disappear, and you can, while they're appearing, you can look through them on the ends, the head and the tail. You can see through them. But in the middle, they're opaque. You can't see through it.
Okay, so
that's something dimensional to me.
Gotcha. So it's different than like the fish, or it's translucent deep in the sea, because they're translucent through and through. They don't have that sort of dark middle.
Right.
Okay. Any other creatures, cryptids, or anything like that?
If I started to go down the list, I think people would their eyes would glaze over and they go, "Come on."
Okay.
So, I don't want to get into the leprechaun sightings, the trooping fairies, other elemental type things. The
You just did. You just mentioned them.
The telephone operator lights, thousands of little blinking white lights that
all right, give us one.
Surround people.
Give us the leprechaun
I just
one.
did.
Yeah, give us the leprechaun one though. I mean, give us one.
All right. A blue-eyed, dark-haired. He could have been a GQ model. His name was Johnny. He's a John born on St. John's Day, so he immediately was before he could crawl. They began training him to be a witch catcher, because he was a John born on St. John's Day. Go look it up. And he was considered, a pretty accomplished brujo by the time that this particular event happened. I think he was in his mid-20s, 24, 25. He was up on Greenie, in the Rock Creek Canyon area, Greenie Mountain, and was elk hunting. And he had a big buck. He was 2/3 of the way up Greenie, and there was a meadow, and he had a big buck in the meadow, and he had his, bow ready to go, and he was just about to, get a really good trophy buck. And he heard a twig crack to his left, and he kind of slowly looked over, and it was a little guy about 2.5 feet tall, maybe 3, dressed in green, had a floppy green, like a felt hat, had orange hair sticking out of the hat, and his face was really badly sunburned. And he caught him mid-step when he looked at him, and they both went, "Holy shit." They both looked at each other like, "What?" And he zipped back around the tree, and Johnny forgot about his elk. He went running over. He said he was about 50, 60 feet away. He went running over, looking behind the tree, and of course he was gone. And of course he didn't get the buck. But I know Johnny, and he was actually a nephew of a guitar player in 3 of my bands. And it was... He it took a lot of work to get the story out of him, let's put it that way. But what makes this story even cooler is 2 weeks later, the head of maintenance for a large county in the San Luis Valley, the head of maintenance, had been there for years, was like, he was like a big fish in a small pond, Mm-hmm. And he and his family, his wife and kids, were about a quarter mile down the mountain from where Johnny was, in another meadow, and they were having a picnic. And then one of the kids said, "Daddy, what's that?" And he pointed over, and there was a leprechaun, same exact description, at the edge of the meadow, in the tree line. And he got up and started walking towards it, and it zipped away. And this was 2 weeks after Johnny's sighting. Now, I got Johnny's report from my guitar player, and I wasn't able to, it took me a couple months to get him to talk to me. But the Martinez report with the family, I got, 2 weeks later, and I was able to interview them and stuff. And then when I interviewed Johnny, I knew he had seen some little man, but I didn't get the details until I talked to him. And when he told me what he saw, it was the exact same description as the Martinez family. So, I don't believe in leprechauns, but it's kind of hard to argue with two really good quality reports in the same quarter-mile location within 2 weeks of one another. And I asked Johnny when I finally got him to talk, I said, well, what do you think you saw? And he goes, I don't know. There's some little leprechaun who was on vacation and he forgot to bring his sunscreen.
So what makes it a leprechaun versus, I don't know, a gnome or a dwarf or a hobbit?
I don't know. You tell me. Or a Tommy knocker.
Okay, so we're just using leprechaun as a placeholder because
hey, if he's dressed in green, has orange hair and a sunburn, and has a floppy green hat, what would you call him?
Yeah, you know what? Fair enough. You're right. I would.
All right. Okay, here's one.
I would ask him for Lucky Charms.
Here's one. Right with all the ground, one of two ground zeros for the Prairie Dragons. Okay, Jack Cookerly. I think he's passed away now, so I'll use his name. For many years, I didn't. He was the number 1 keyboard player in Hollywood all during the 50s and early to mid 60s. He played the on Twilight Zone. He played the theme for Star Trek, The Untouchables, the Donna Reed Show, My Three Sons. I could go down the list. 600 credits of TVs and films. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. He did the soundtrack. The guy was amazing. He's about 5'5", 5'6", little guy. And he just turned 70 when he made this report. But he was like, I don't know what degree black belt in karate. He could kick a heavy bag off the hook at 70 years old. Wow. He did it. He would plop onto the floor. The guy was amazing. And so the navigator at the end of World War II was a navigator for the Navy, pilot, and very good observer. Reported a bunch of really cool sighting events prior to this. But he called me up one day and said, Chris, I really, please, reserve your judgment until you hear me out. And I said, wow, Jack, it sounds heavy. And he goes, yeah. I said, you mind if I come over? He says, no, come on down. Well, the guy was a senior developer for Roland and Korg and helped design the Roland Juno 60 and the Korg keyboards in the 80s and stuff. He has the patent on 40 different electronic devices, including electric guitar. He patented the Roland Sound Canvas, which was a go-to peripheral that I and many other keyboard players relied on for years. So anyway, I go down there and he goes, Chris, here I was sitting right here in this chair in my studio, and something, I sensed movement behind me. So I turned around, and right behind him, slightly over to the left, was the door going into the main, studio room. And he said, through the door, closed door, they dissolved into the room were, he said, I don't know, 8, maybe 9 little guys, about 6 to 8 inches tall. They were dressed in cloaks, and they had these tall, funny hats on like Keystone Cops. He said they marched in a row right by my feet, went out through the wall of the room here, my studio, and he said the last one didn't go out. It stood there, turned around, and it gave me a dirty look, and then it went through the wall.
Okay.
I rests my case.
Yeah. I'm wondering why he merited the dirty look. I mean, they went through his place, but all right. Well, what do we think those were? Imps? Fairies? I mean, what?
Fairies. I mean, by literal definition, fairies have been known to troop in groups of 6, 7, 8 and go on their merry way. But with Keystone cop hats and cloaks, capes.
Yeah, well, I mean, the attire is probably the least sensational part of the tale. But hey, who knows? Maybe maybe it was a ceremonial garb. Maybe they were going to a ceremony, and that was like popes wear their big hats during certain things and not others. So
right. Well, and he also had 90. He estimated 90 sightings of prairie dragons right on that property.
Wow. So,
which is just up and over the hill, about 500 yards away from the area that I identified as the doorway.
Well, he must have been near then. That doorway must be near some area of other kind of spiritual or religious or other important significance for them.
It's on a Tibetan ley line.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, the ley lines are always in play. I have a question if you're going back to, I think it was Jimmy or Johnny, and you said he was a brujo, which is, male witch. But if they're training someone to be a witch hunter, that means there has to be witches. So, I mean, I have to ask you about the witch situation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I don't know how many reports, at least a dozen, where people will call me, I'm okay, hey, Faye, the witches are out tonight. I saw a witch. I said, well, what do you mean? It's this ball of light going hell bent for leather across the prairie, man. It was in a rush. It was in a hurry.
So what are the descriptions of the witches? I mean, it can't be like Brunhilde from the Bugs Bunny cartoons or Wizard of Oz. I mean, how does one know it's a witch?
Well, you don't. You have to trick it. You have to come up with a way to ID it. The witch catchers were trained how to keep them contained within a room so that they can't leave. And then the town elders get together and decide what to do once it's trapped.
Is this, forgive me for being so blunt on this, but are the witch catchers, are they all First Nations, or is it also something that others can learn, like Caucasians, African Americans,
I think it's a genetic thing. I think there's a tradition of knowledge that's passed along within families for the most part, and the witches are they have their own societies, they have their own groups, and some are brujas and brujos and curanderas. They're more involved in the positive side of healing people, working on the side of good. And then, you have your witchy witches, which are the ones that are more into, being spiritual hitmen or, hiring them to do ill to others and using, like skinwalkers. They use bone projectiles and corpse powder and other things to harm unsuspecting people.
What is a skinwalker?
And they're hired by people to harm.
I'm sorry, what's a skinwalker?
It's the most detrimental and nastiest and spookiest of all the Dene witches. They're there's probably not many of them left, but the real adepts that have the old knowledge, they're able to shapeshift into various animal forms. They turn into balls of light and fly low to the ground really fast, and they want to get somewhere fast. That's why I get reports of witches.
Gotcha.
Because they see these balls of light tearing ass across the prairie, and that's what they're taught. And so it's kind of hard to document something document a report when it's got this subcultural bias attached to it. But I've seen enough and heard enough, and gotten to know some of the older folks, and heard some of the accounts. These people had nothing to gain from telling me. They said, "You can't use this. You can't use my name, but I think you should know this is what you're dealing with." And so I have a bunch of stories that I've had that I'm not, I promised that I wouldn't talk about it, and definitely wouldn't use their name. So after a few years of gathering every now and then accounts like that, you start to take this subject matter a lot more seriously than perhaps I did when I began. And talking with Dr. Lynn Weldon, who was the head of sociology for Adams State University, he was a guy that had been documenting a bunch of stuff that happened in the valley since the 60s. And he died in the early 2000s, unfortunately. But he became an early mentor. And he was the one that really turned me on to all this subcultural Hispano and Apache and Kiowa and Tiwa knowledge. And he said that you have to go back to these primary accounts and primary stories and traditions to get a full understanding of what we're seeing today. And he was right. I'm forever in his debt for taking me and showing me the ropes of not only what was there to investigate and dig into, but how to talk to the people, how to make myself, how to be presentable to, 6th, 7th, 8th generation Hispanics. It's not easy.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. Well, if you know any of the, you said the good or the good intentioned witches or any of the local shaman or holy men or elders or the brujos who are willing to talk to me, I would be more than happy to accept any referrals, and I'd appreciate talking to them. And, my only agenda is curiosity. But moving on, you talked about strange weather phenomena. What are we talking about here?
Well, the San Luis Valley and the areas, the Continental Divide, especially, which is west of the valley. Mm-hmm. I had a spate of these like crop circles, but they were within virgin forest, and so they Lawrence Rockefeller referred to them as tree circles. I'm not sure I go that far, but these blowdown events are really perplexing. The Forest Service is not allowed to talk about them. They have a gag order. And when they occur, weird things happen. I'll give you an example that the chief archaeologist for the Rio Grande National Forest, Ken Fry, I told him that there had been a blowdown event. It was a small one. It was only about 10 acres. It was right up in Swatch Park. It was, I don't know, probably up about 8,500 feet, maybe 9,000. And I went there and I drew a map of it, and you could tell where the force came in and then where it left. It left battening down a point of grass out into the park, from the forest out into the grass, and you could see where it left. And the last part of it was like an inch across. And so we were there. I went up there with Inside Edition, actually. I did a pretty high profile story on TV, and I told Ken, and he went up there with his team, and they started digging around. And he called me and he said, Chris, you're not going to believe this, but inside that circle, we found tons of really important artifacts. Folsom Man, going all the way back 5,000 years. He said this may be the highest site where this type of artifact has been found. It turns out a few years later there was a site a little bit higher that Dennis Stanford from the Smithsonian found. But he said what's peculiar is as soon as we went outside of the blowdown, there was no artifacts. And we went all the way around. Inside the circle, the trees were blown down, swirled down. 100-foot trees. But outside the circle, and they found artifacts. Outside of the circle, they found none.
So 2 questions comes from that. One, I mean, you said circles, so the blowdowns are in geometric patterns?
Not like a crop circle, not,
okay,
with all the fancy doodads and everything, but it's definitely, it's a localized event.
Okay. Do you think that maybe the blowdown events are because they want you to find those artifacts, so they're telling you exactly what the boundaries are?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just reporting the news here. Yeah.
All right. I'm speculating beyond your comfort zone. I can see that.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, what else? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. How about the one? Oh my God! It was like 2 million trees got blown down on October 17th, 1997, up in the northern Rockies, just opposite Fort Collins. It was a huge storm. 20 miles of trees got laid down, and less than 2 weeks later, a week to 10 days later, mad cow disease was detected in the deer in that area. And that particular outbreak of mad cow has spread across the entire eastern side of the country.
And so they're harbinger of something.
Yeah, nature giving us a warning. That's the only thing I can think of.
Okay, fair enough. Besides the blowdowns, any other sort of weather-based anomalies?
Yeah, lots of them. But to me, it's all mundane. It can be explained. I don't really read anything into it. It just seems when we have weird weather, you're going to have something else going on that's strange. And oftentimes when we have UFO sightings, there'll be a combination of weird societal behavior, outbreaks of murders and crimes that just don't make any sense. And we had one weekend where Stephen Greer came and did his CE5, his training ambassadors to the universe. I think it was his 3rd or 4th year. He had been doing them there. My biggest mistake is turning him on to the valley. You can blame me for it. But he came, and everywhere but Crestone, where he had his 20, 25 people, everywhere in the valley but Crestone had UFO sightings. And we had an unusual amount of fires, like 6-8 fires. There was a wedding the next morning, and at the reception, the maid of honor, who was the sister of the bride, knifed her sister, the bride, to death. Totally inexplicable. They still probably today haven't figured out what was up with that. And we had the weird weather patterns and clear sky, hail, and just bizarre.
Definitely sounds like it. Okay. Now, I don't know if you want to talk about any of the UFO sightings and or anything like that. So anything that's particularly notable?
I mean, there's so many. I mean, 1,000 freaking sighting reports at least that I went out. There probably more. every size, shape, every type, from big, huge, giant, 4 times the size of the moon, green fireballs, shooting all the way along the tops of the Sangres for over 100 miles, just a few seconds, to small ruby red lights that would, pace along my car, alongside my car with my band members. The orange lights tend to appear when there's mutilation activity. They're probably about beach ball sized, basketball to beach ball sized.
What was your impression or your reaction to the government's recent report, which was, sort of an admission, a little bit underwhelming, but in the big picture, I mean, sort of huge. They basically acknowledged and released all this Navy footage, and I don't know, they said something like they investigated 143, and they had explanations for, I don't know, it was like 9, and the other, they
have thousands of hours of gun camera footage.
Sure.
That doesn't have some sort of, IR, black and white fuzziness. They're just playing with us. They're trying to get ahead of the narration. They're trying to dictate the conversation now. They realize that all the Cold Warriors that kept us under wraps for decades are now dead or dying, and they have to, move it on to the next level.
But it's a confession, right? It's a confession. It's an admission.
Yeah, but it's BS.
But what do you mean by that? Do you say it's BS because it's only a little bit?
This is what we got. They have stuff going back to the 50s and 40s that are just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.
Sure, but
Gordon Cooper filmed a freaking saucer landing at Edwards Air Force Base. And, he turned the film in like a good patriotic American. And, when he went to inquire, he said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, you're a good American. You don't need to know that." "Do you need to know?"
Well, when Son of Sam, in 97, admitted to 3 murders, but not the others, he still admitted to the 3 murders. So, I mean, even if it's a small piece, it's still an admission.
Yeah, it's a big step forward. I agree. But to me, it's, way
But you think
too late.
You think they're trying to give us little by little to sort of condition us so that it becomes no big deal, by the time
the government's role is control. They are attempting, or they have come up with a way that they think will allow them control of the narration, of the narrative, and of the subject.
And why now? Is it because there's just too much out there that
because all their big brothers and their daddies were too afraid to go there since the 40s. And now they're all dead. So the next generation is having to pick up the pieces and do the right thing. And they're doing it very gingerly.
Okay. I think that's a fair description. If people wanted to find you or support you or buy any of your stuff, where can they find you? Take your time to promote whatever you'd like to promote.
I'm not into this to promote myself. I'm into this to get to the bottom of as many questions as I can find truth. OurStrangePlanet.com. That's where to find me. You can find me on Facebook. I do have a map that has 70 places to go in the San Luis Valley. Each one on Google Maps. You click on it, and there's a picture and a description of why it's listed. And just go to Google Maps and go, places to go, San Luis Valley, and you'll find it. Or at Our Strange Planet, there's a click through to the map. Other than that, I write books. I do lots of media work, and just, you want to support me on Patreon, you can go there, or you can support me on GoFundMe for my UFODAP project, my UFO data acquisition project, which is setting up cameras and gravitometers and magnetometers and radio frequency spectrum analyzers in hotspot areas. I'm working with a partner, and we've got a bunch of systems going in, all connected to triangulate Google Maps. sighting events, and we're creating a network around the world. If you want to get involved, ufodap.com.
There you go. Perfect. All right, great. Well, I hope that people do support you. I know that you're not in it for the money, but you got to eat too, and you have to pay for gas, and you have to pay for supplies and equipment to document this stuff. So it doesn't mean that you're in it for profit, but you have to be able to live to do it. So, all right. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Again, any referrals to folks would be appreciated. And I wish you best. And if you come upon anything, any discoveries or whatever, you're always welcome back. You know how to reach me.
Sure.
And I appreciate your time today, and enjoy having your internet service back after a 2-3 day outage.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. And thanks for inviting me, Jeff.
You got it. Thanks so much. All right. Take care now. All right, folks. I just hung up with Chris, as you probably heard. So that's Chris O'Brien, and he gave you, a pretty good rundown of all the places you can find him and read his stuff. There are times he seemed a little bit reluctant to speak. I think other times it was just that maybe my questions were so silly or over the top. He's sort of tired of dealing with maybe people like me, amateurs. But if you want to get the full detail, I guess read the books. And if you do a search, you'll find these on lots of TV shows. He's been on, I can't even remember the names, but things that you see like on the National Geographic, Discovery, History Channel, places like that. So check that stuff out. If you are inclined and able, support his efforts. And hope you enjoyed the show, and hope you enjoyed learning about the San Luis Valley and all the, it sort of seems to be the hotbed of North American, we'll just call it paranormal, supernatural, almost, sort of a much bigger version of Shutter Island. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again. Thanks for supporting Garden of Doom. If you're into wrestling, check out Hammerlock Hangover. If you want to see me talk about wrestling, check out Unpopular Review. As I rarely remember to do, but I'm going to right now, please like and share this show with your friends. This is a show that very much depends on word of mouth because it sort of is genre defying. And give us 5 stars, write reviews. No matter what service you're on, if you could do it on Apple, that's the one that counts as far as reviews are concerned. But we appreciate anything that you do. And you can reach me on Twitter there's Evil Dose at Garden of Doom, I think, and also my regular Twitter, which is Icarus Fell MD. I don't really care which one you use, to be frank. But all right, if you pick one, do Icarus Fell MD, just because the Evil Dose one, I try to keep that one small on purpose to keep it neat and clean, mostly for news. All right, thanks a lot. Thanks for bearing with me, and have a great day.
Coming home to a place he'd never been before. He left yesterday behind him. You might say he was born again. You might say he found the key for every door. When he first came to the mountains, his life was far away on the road, hanging by a song. But the string's already broken, and he doesn't really care. It keeps changing fast, and it don't last for long. With the Colorado Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. The shadow from the starlight is softer than a lullaby. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. He climbed Cathedral Mountains. He saw silver clouds below. He saw everything as far as you can see. And the they say that he got crazy once and he tried to touch the sun, and he lost a friend but kept the memory. Now he walks in quiet solitude, the forests and the streams, seeking grace in every step he takes. His side is turned inside himself to try and understand the serenity of a clear blue mountain lake. In the Colorado Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. Talk to God and listen to the casual reply. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Now his life is full of wonder, but his heart still knows some fear of a simple thing he cannot comprehend. While they try to tear the mountains down to bring in a couple more people, more scars upon the land. In the Colorado Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. I know he'd be a poorer man if he never saw an eagle fly. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. Friends around the campfire and everybody's high. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High, Rocky Mountain High, Rocky Mountain.